Equal force mandate, the sacred cow of fairness. It's in support of Australia loves criminals and hates guns. About a decade and a half ago, at a high school in or near Seattle, a student was repeatedly harassed and bullied, and this included $1,500 vandalism to his car. He repeatedly tried to involve authorities, who basically said they couldn't help him. I believe they said something to the effect that he had to figure out what he was doing to offend them. But the authorities were all too willing to get involved when he dared to fight back against a female student who assaulted him with a bag of ice. He was ganged up on, kicked, and ordered to apologize to her. When he refused, the police were called. He was arrested, eventually convicted, and served prison time. Why didn't the authorities put the same burden on the school? Why didn't they tell the school to find out what they were doing to offend him, huh? Now, as for my assumption that it was considered a boy hits girl offense, I don't recall if it was ever stated as such, but my assumption is not an accusation or worst case scenario thinking. It is more like a best case assumption that they had at least a remotely decent rationale for protecting a thug from her victim. It appears to be a classic example of how fairness has become such a sacred cow. It's also an example of the hypocrisy of EFM, in that they completely ignore the fact that a numerical advantage is infinitely more unfair than a size or even gender advantage. Those who enforce EFM must subject themselves to the same restraint in doing so. They need to actually abide by a higher standard. In fact, there is no right way to enforce EFM. It must necessarily be either hypocritical or inept. Breaking EFM down to its least subjective definition, the only non-hypocritical way to enforce it is to make sure at least half your suspects get away. After all, if you're truly using equal force, that's exactly what will happen. And even so, that would have to show up in the statistics too. If you win your first confrontation, you better lose your second one, or you'll be arrested for EFM violation. Oh, but that's okay, because if the arresting officer is on the up and up, he'll probably let you escape anyway. Unless he let his last one escape, then he may not. Why would I want to put the lives of the EFMPD at risk? Well, since EFM by definition only applies to law-abiding citizens, that question can have no meaning. The only ones EFM can possibly be enforced on are those who by default already have the odds stacked against them. The ones causing the confrontation can end it at any time. Because those who are not causing it have that disadvantage, they cannot possibly be cheating by using superior force by virtue of that fact. Basically, they're, as James Kirk said about the Kobayashi Maru, or to paraphrase it, the confrontation is itself a cheat. While equal force may only be official law in Australia, it constantly rears its ugly head as public policy almost everywhere else. Oddly, the most extreme expression of the sacred cow of fairness, which makes for a nice acronym, was a fictional account of an apocalyptic novel called The 7 Last Years that I read about 25 years ago. A character named Jason was trying to defend his friend Susan from a much bigger man who was trying to rape her. The author stated his dilemma to the effect that even though he learned a lot of tricks in street fighting, he had to fight, as a Christian, he had to fight fair. Now, name one unfair way of finishing what a much stronger person started. This may be a fictional drama, but chances are the author was reflecting his own beliefs, basically his own belief system. Now, Jason successfully relied on Jesus to miraculously intervene. The problem, however, is this. If God doesn't take exception to a Christian who uses working skills to support his family, why should he despise someone who uses a combative edge to protect the same? Part of what I find confusing here is that the fact that the political right is usually so much more church friendly and the church is generally much more conservative. That's why it's so outrageous that a Christian author could push such left wing drivel on his readers. Now, for the most part, I liked the novel and I morally agreed with it, but this was a one part that I took great exception to. I want to make it clear here that I'm not scorning anyone who relies on miracles to fight his battles for him. What I am scorning is anyone telling someone that it's wrong to use his God-given talents in the process and refuse to give in to scoff. Church, leave the sacred cows to the Hindus, huh?